Seating position can be a nuanced affair for each and every rider, with big differences being observable even from the best riders in the world. In this video, I want to touch on one particular facet of seating position and how that can help or hinder your ability to do your job on the bike. How close should we sit to the tank? So, we're going to look at how close or far away from the tank we should be sitting. Specifically, should we sit as close as we possibly can or sit a little way off it? Let's jump straight in and look at the pros and cons of each. First, we'll look at sitting as close as possible. By that, I mean sitting as far forward in the seat as you can without any space between your man or woman parts. Sitting forward like this offers two main benefits, one fairly big and one not so big. The biggest benefit it offers is the greater support for the lower body under braking. Having slid as far forward as you can, when the time comes that you need to brake very hard for the next corner, you shouldn't have any trouble stopping yourself sliding forward in the seat because there's nowhere else to go. This can save a little energy compared to a rider that sits further back and has to brace themselves to maintain their original seating position. The other, not so big benefit comes on the power when exiting a corner. On modern, powerful machines, it doesn't take too much to have the front wheel pouring the air. And even on bikes with wheelie control, if you can stop that electronic aid kicking in to keep the bike driving forward, then that's simply going to save you time. By sitting farther forward, more of your weight is over the front end, meaning you can accelerate harder before the front wheel begins to lift. However, we're only talking about a few inches difference here, so really that in itself won't have a big difference for most track riders. The biggest downside to this seating position is how it affects your ability to hang off the bike. Sitting close to the tank means you'll have a tendency to rotate around it when you try to slide off sideways, which will most likely leave you in a crossed up position on the bike. Your inside knee will also move more forward of the bike rather than moving out away from it as it should. If you try to slide off too much from this position, you can also lose too much contact with the outside leg, which will compromise your lower body stability and mean you'll struggle to maintain a more modern style of hanging off. This is because when trying to slide off the seat when sitting close to the tank tends to lever the outside leg off it. Another downside is just the opposite of the advantage we just talked about. Sitting farther forward will mean the rear wheel will lift easier under braking because your weight is further forward. But again, this will only be a small difference. Now, let's look at sitting a little way off the tank. By this I mean sitting about 3-4 inches away from the tank, which is about 8 to 10 centimeters. We don't want to sit too far back because that can also compromise lower body stability. Like we talked about in my video on fatiguing legs and achy knees, where sitting too far back puts a lot of strain on the legs during your hang-off, because once again you don't have quality connection with that outside leg. As you would expect, the advantages are the opposite of the disadvantages in the previous case. If we sit a little way further back, we can more easily slide sideways off the seat while retaining a good solid contact with the outside leg, which is a vital part of your lower body stability, especially for the average rider where leg strength and stamina is at a premium. Also, with your hips less twisted and more square with the bike, it's easier to find and maintain a nice neutral upper body position, with your spine either running parallel with the bike or pointing a little way to the inside of it. This is a more ideal position by modern standards. And again, by sitting farther back, you'll gain a slight advantage in terms of outright braking potential with more of your weight over the rear wheel. As for the downsides, the biggest comes from the extra lower body support needed under braking to stop yourself sliding forward. This can come from your feet on the pegs and your knees up against the tank, which depending on your bike setup can require a fair amount of effort to achieve in the biggest braking zones. So which should you use? Anyone that's been following me for a while will likely know that I advocate sitting a little way back from the tank for all the body position benefits it brings. I think this approach falls more in line with what we see today in modern performance riding, and it's what I recommend riders aim to achieve because, in my opinion, the positives outweigh the negatives. However, I don't tend to be someone that vehemently sits behind every tiny detail of body position saying that it must be done a certain way, especially when riders up to a very high level can be observed taking different approaches. For that reason, I'd always suggest working to achieve the modern standard of riding, but if you genuinely feel it's more comfortable to use the former approach and it allows you to ride to a higher standard, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. As long as you're adhering to the fundamentals of a good body position, that approach is okay in my book. How far away do you sit from the tank, and have you made any tweaks in the past to improve your overall support and comfort? Tell us about it in the comments down below, and as always, if you like the video then please hit the button and subscribe to the channel for more performance riding advice and guides moving forward. I'll see you in the next one.